The child in the window. There is a particular kind of silence that only old houses hold. It is not emptiness. It is not stillness. It is weight, the sound of time settling into walls, the quiet hum of things that remember. That is the silence I felt when I first stood in front of the house with the crooked shutters and the single, dark window on the upper floor. I should have walked past it. Many people did. It was just another remnant of centuries gone, a relic left to sag and wither while the city modernized around it. But something in that house drew me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else, something older waiting. The first time I noticed the window, dusk had just begun to thicken. The street was dim, lamplight scattered thinly across the cobblestones. A cold mist drifted low, clinging to the ground and softening the outlines of every structure. The house sat in shadow, withdrawn, its facade a skin of peeling paint and warped boards. But the window held me. It was a square of deeper darkness against the gray, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement behind it. Not light, not shadow, something pale, something small, pressed against the glass. A child's face. I blinked. The mist swirled. The window was empty again. The rational part of me told myself it was nothing, a trick of the dim light, a shape behind warped glass, the reflection of some distant passerby. But the unease lingered, curling inside my chest like smoke. I returned to that street many times. I don't know why. Each time I felt the same tug, the same pull toward the house. And each time I looked up. Sometimes the window was bare. Sometimes it wasn't. There were evenings when I swore I saw her. A girl, thin, pale, her hair falling in limp strands, her face too still, too quiet. She never moved, never waved, never shifted. She only stared. The glass distorted her features, but there was something unmistakably wrong about the proportions. The eyes too dark, too wide, sunken into hollows that should not have belonged to someone so young. I told myself again and again not to look, that it was better not to know. But the human mind doesn't work that way. Curiosity gnaws. One night I gave in. The air was damp, thick with the smell of rain-soaked wood. Clouds smothered the moon, leaving the street in dim orange glow from the lamps. My steps echoed against the stones as I approached. Every instinct in me whispered to turn back, but I didn't. The front door was swollen with age, its paint flaked into scabs. When I touched the handle, a faint chill spread through my fingers, like metal left too long in the cold. The door resisted at first, then groaned open with a sound like bone splintering. Inside, the air was heavier still, stale. The smell was sharp, mold clinging to wood, mixed with something sweet and sickly beneath it. It reminded me of damp earth that had been left to rot. The floorboards moaned under my weight. My footsteps carried too far, echoing into the empty halls. Wallpaper peeled from the walls in curling strips, revealing plaster riddled with cracks. Dust floated in the beam of my flashlight, each particle shifting as though stirred by something more than my breath. The silence was alive. I could feel it pressing on me, listening. I moved deeper into the house, my light sweeping across sagging furniture, shattered glass, and the remains of a staircase climbing into darkness. The wood there looked brittle, eaten through by years, but it was the only way up. The steps complained as I climbed. Each one gave beneath me, threatening to break, but still holding. Halfway up, I paused. There was sound above me. Not movement, breathing. Faint, steady, too shallow to be my own. I wanted to leave. My body told me to leave. Yet my eyes dragged upward, toward the square of pale light at the end of the hall. The window. The door to the room stood half open, sagging on rusted hinges. My hand shook as I pushed it further. The room beyond was small, lined with warped boards that creaked even under my softest steps. The air smelled stronger here, like rust and old cloth. And there it was, the window, the one I had stared at so many times from the street. The glass was cracked at one corner, a long vein splitting downward, and standing before it, outlined faintly by the glow of the street lamp outside, was the figure of a child. She was smaller than I expected, thin arms hanging limp at her sides, her head tilted ever so slightly, as though the weight of it was too much. Her hair was dull, stringy, clinging to her face. She did not turn when I entered. She did not move at all. I stood frozen, my breath sharp in my throat. The silence between us stretched, heavy, unbroken. Then, without warning, she moved. Not a step, not a gesture, just her head, twitching to the side in a jerky motion that seemed more like something pulled than something chosen. And though her body remained facing the glass, I saw her face in the reflection. The eyes, empty, hollow pits, darker than any shadow in that room. Her mouth was not closed, but stretched open in a way that was too wide, too slack, the skin around it strained. I staggered back, my heel catching on the warped floorboard. The beam of my flashlight shook, scattering across the walls. And in that flicker of light, I saw them. Handprints. Tiny, smeared across the glass from the inside. Dozens of them, layered over one another, pressed in desperation. Some slid downward, leaving faint streaks that trailed off into nothing. The girl did not move again. She only stared at me through her reflection, her stillness louder than any scream. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember the stairs, the door, the street outside. I only remember the rush of air against my face as I ran, the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. But even now, whenever I pass that street, I can't help but look up. And sometimes, when the mist clings heavy and the lamps burn low, I see her again, standing there, the child in the window. The footsteps in the fog. There are nights when the world feels suspended, as if time itself is holding its breath. Nights when the air is so heavy and thick that every sound seems to travel too far, echoing in ways that don't belong. That was the kind of night I found myself walking alone through the fog. The city was muffled beneath it, the familiar outlines of buildings blurred and indistinct. Street lamps glowed like pale, sickly orbs, their light unable to cut through more than a few feet of the haze. Beyond that shallow glow, there was only grayness, a shifting veil that seemed to swallow everything whole. The air tasted damp, tinged with the metallic bite of old rain and the faint, bitter smoke of chimney soot clinging to stone. The cobblestones beneath my feet were slick, worn smooth by centuries of steps before mine. I told myself I was alone. I wanted to believe it, but the fog has a way of making you doubt the obvious. That was when I heard it. The first sound was faint, carried almost too softly to notice. A rhythm. The steady fall of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, somewhere within the blank wall of fog behind me. At first, I thought it was only my imagination, my own steps reflecting strangely through the mist. But then the pattern shifted. It slowed when I slowed, but it did not match me exactly. It lingered, trailing a half beat behind, as though whoever, or whatever it was, did not want to be mistaken for my echo. I stopped. The sound continued. The footsteps dragged into silence a moment later, the way someone might if they realized they'd been caught. I stood frozen, my breath clouding faintly in the damp air. The lamps around me hissed softly, their flames trembling in the mist. Every instinct screamed that I should run, but there was nowhere to go. The street stretched ahead, swallowed by the fog. Behind me, nothing but the same blank wall of gray. I forced myself forward. One step, then another. The silence pressed in around me, so complete that I could hear the creak of leather in my shoes, the faint rasp of my sleeve brushing against my coat. And then again. Footsteps. Heavier this time. Slow, deliberate, as if weighed down by something more than flesh. They kept their distance, never too close, never too far, always following. I could feel the rhythm sink into me, matching my pulse, filling my chest with a dread that seemed to tighten with every breath. My mind told me it could be anyone. A passerby, another lost soul trying to navigate the fog. But something deep inside me knew better. There was weight in those steps that did not belong to the living. The fog shifted ahead of me, parting just enough to reveal the faint outline of a narrow alley. Without thinking, I turned into it, hoping the tight passage would grant me relief, some way to lose whatever lingered behind. The walls closed in around me, slick with moisture, the scent of mold clinging to their stones. The air here was colder, pressed tight against my skin, making each breath feel thin. I paused, straining my ears. Nothing. For a moment, hope flickered. And then the sound came again. Closer now, the scrape of a heel dragging slightly against stone, the hollow thud of weight pressing into the ground. The alley seemed endless. Each step I took was swallowed instantly by the mist, the walls warping into shapes that didn't feel right, angles too sharp or too curved to belong to the world I knew. My hands brushed against damp brick as I moved, searching for stability, for proof that the ground beneath me was still real. The footsteps never faltered. They matched me, measured and relentless, always just beyond the edge of sight. I began to notice something strange. The rhythm was wrong. Too many feet. It wasn't a single set of steps. It was many. A cadence that grew heavier, layered. One pair became two, then three, until the sound swelled into the echo of dozens, maybe more, marching in slow unison through the fog. The air trembled with it. The stones beneath me seemed to hum faintly with each impact, as though the weight of unseen bodies pressed into the earth. I turned a corner sharply, desperate to break free, but the sound followed, flooding the alley, surrounding me on all sides. My chest ached with panic, my throat tightening as if the fog itself were seeping inside me, filling me up with its cold. I could feel them now, not with my eyes, but with something deeper. The presence of countless figures moving just beyond the veil, their shapes brushing against the edges of my perception. Shadows in the mist, taller than men, broader, their forms shifting as though wrapped in tattered cloth or armor long decayed. And then, through the curtain of fog, I saw them. Not clearly, not all at once, but pieces. The glint of metal catching lamplight, the faint suggestion of helmets, of boots grinding against stone. Faces that weren't faces at all, just hollow impressions, blank and watching. Their heads did not turn toward me, yet I felt their gaze burrow into me all the same. They moved with purpose, a formation of silence and rhythm, a column of the forgotten. Soldiers without flesh, bound to a march that had never ended. The footsteps grew louder, surrounding me, pressing closer until the fog trembled with their weight. My knees weakened, my vision narrowing, every part of me screaming to flee, to break from the path and tear through the mist. But my body would not obey. I stood rooted, helpless, as the shapes closed in. The footsteps were no longer behind me. They were beside me, in front of me, moving past and through me, their rhythm vibrating in my bones. I could feel the cold weight of them, pressing into my chest, slipping into my skin, as if I had become part of their endless march. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The sound fell away, swallowed by silence so deep it left my ears ringing. The fog thinned, just slightly, enough to reveal the street opening into a square I did not recognize. The lamps glowed faintly ahead, and the air smelled of wet stone and smoke again. When I dared to look behind me, the alley was empty. No movement, no sound, only the faint impression of damp footprints on the stones, too many to count, fading as quickly as they had appeared. I left that place and never returned, but even now, when the fog rolls thick through the city and the streets fall quiet, I sometimes catch the faintest echo of them again. The weight of boots against stone, the rhythm of the forgotten, the footsteps in the fog.